completely fucked up.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Destination Truth. Today is Saturday, November 4th, and today there was supposed to be a lot of Antifa things going on, but it sounds like all quiet on the Western Front, and the Eastern for that matter. But this video is one that I didn't think I'd have to make for some time. I've thought about making this video for months, in fact, but I have like 3 videos that I've already filmed and I'm editing, and I just realized after today and looking for news on today and realizing that there are a great deal of videos being made of actually people on the right. I'm sure there's tons of them on the left as well, but I haven't looked at those because, well, I know who those people are. The people on the right is who I want to watch right now because I want to be sure that they're aware of what's really going on. And I see a lot of people making videos like, oh, civil war is coming. And in my opinion, you're a little bit mistaken in that regard because it's not going to be a civil war. What's coming is a Bolshevik revolution. And that does mean that there will be chaos in the streets. There will be no standing armies. There will be mobs of people robbing and looting the wealthy and killing the wealthy. And if they can get people in power by overthrowing local or even federal government agencies, they will rule the country. Now, I don't think there's any chance of that happening in the U.S. No way. I mean, only a moron would think that. I mean, George Soros recently gave like $18 million to another communist group. So he probably thinks that they can do it, but let's face it. The vast majority of people in the U.S. military and veterans are on the right because of things that they understand that the left don't, because the left have gone to colleges and have been brainwashed. Like myself, but I wasn't brainwashed because I read books and actually look into the philosophy and the actual meaning behind some of the things that you're forced to read. So, something that you're probably never even heard of in your communist forced public education in the United States was the best book ever written, potentially. It's by a personal hero of mine, and I believe he's one of the best heroes that has ever existed for mankind in modern times. His name is Alexander Solzhenitsyn. You should know who that is. He wrote The Gulag Archipelago. There's actually 4 volumes, and this one is all 4 of them combined. It's really long, and to be honest, I still haven't finished this freaking book, but I'm about 4/5 of the way through, and I just want to share one of many amazing quotes from the book, but I just want to explain, basically do a book report for you guys, because I literally don't believe that anyone in this country should be able to vote even without having read this book, or at least know its contents. Because what people don't understand, especially all the brainwashed morons, is that their movement is violent, and their movement is evil. And communism is evil. And no communist government has ever existed on planet Earth that has not killed millions upon millions of its own people. The Soviet Union killed north of 65 million people. Rumors have it was 66, somewhere around there. The Chinese Communist Revolution and the Chinese government ended up also killing roughly somewhere north of 65 to 70 to, there's rumors of as high as 80 million people. And how do they kill them? It's not by bullets, typically. It's usually by manufactured famine, manufactured shortages of food and goods that are necessary for survival, as well as the authoritarian, evil prison system. And in Russia, it was called, or at least for Alexander Solzhenitsyn, he coined it the Gulag Archipelago, because each one of these prisons was called a gulag. And what most of you don't understand is it was so bad in the Soviet era, and I have some expertise in this because when I was just in middle school, I started realizing how fascinating the Cold War truly was, and what did it actually mean. And so I started learning Russian, and I started reading about Russia. And so today I can speak with some degree of expertise as to what happened in Russia, when it happened, and such. So, the Bolshevik Revolution happened in the beginning. It actually started on November 6th, not 4th. So, just a little word of warning. Maybe today was a ruse to see the reaction on the right, and then the actual revolution will start on Monday, the 6th, and the 7th. But that's the revolution started, and it was started as somewhat of an actual rise of the underclass. It was a class war. But what happened is globalists sent in, as in, yes, he was not actually part of the planning, hardly at all, but they sent in who they wanted to lead this revolution. Of course, in our government schooling, they don't actually want you to be interested in history, so they'll never tell you about the famous armored train that went from Western Europe all the way through Europe, making minimal stops and never actually being opened for customs, only being refueled, so that it can make it all the way to St. Petersburg. Who was on board? You guessed it, Lenin. Vladimir Lenin took the charge of the Bolshevik Revolution because he had so much gold on that train that he was able to basically fund a small private army as well as recruit people like mad. He also had a lot of great help, and the help came in the form of Leon Trotsky and Joseph Stalin. All three of these men were radical. Stalin, for one, was a by any means necessary type of guy. Leon Trotsky was a knowledgeable, very intelligent man who was also an insane socialist. And all three of them essentially were communists to the highest degree we've known on planet Earth's history. Anyway, they basically took the lead of the Bolshevik Revolution and started steering it. And the funny thing is, something that they don't tell you is that the entire revolution only really took place in like two cities. Two cities. Petrograd, which was St. Petersburg, and Leningrad, which was at the time, let me look this up for you guys actually. So the cities it actually took place in was actually Petrograd, aka St. Petersburg, aka Leningrad. So Leningrad, Petrograd, St. Petersburg, all the same place. So it took place there, which was the capital of Russia for a long, long, long time, under the Romanovs or the Tsars. And then the other city was Moscow. So basically, this entire huge country, the largest one on planet Earth, was overthrown in two cities, which were considered the capital cities, basically, of the country. So that should alarm you, just because if there's anything we have learned that matters, it's that D.C. runs the country. The federal government does run this country, and if for some reason there is a siege on D.C. and that they can actually take it over, then there will be a second world war, because all of the patriots through the country will need to unite as militia and take it back before the government, or before the new established government can actually overtake the military. So the good thing is, like I've said in previous videos, that I was very scared that Hillary was going to win the last election, and that if she did, I thought our only saving grace was a military coup. Because most people in the military are on the right, and they understand reality. They're not moved by emotions. They actually want to know about what the reality of things is and what the true history of things was. So I'm going to get into that. But just remember that important detail, which is the Bolshevik Revolution took over an entire giant country for nearly 100 years by taking over only two cities and taking over some small armies and defeating only the Navy. They really only had to defeat the Navy. and the Navy only put up a battle in like 2 or 3 places. So, I mean, keep in mind Russia's military was tiny and puny, and ours is huge, which is why a revolution in this country will not be successful. I'm happy about that. So, getting into the book, what you should know is that the totalitarian government of communism always kills millions of its own people, and the way that the Soviets did it was basically thought policing, and cultural Marxism actually got so bad there that people were policing each other, being that, oh, I heard my neighbor say XYZ, not politically correct, so off to the gulag. And if they couldn't get a good enough charge on you, there's a number of charges that he discusses thoroughly in this book, which were literally things like relations to, like, how are you related to someone that did do something bad? So let's say your brother was thrown in the gulag for his ideas. Well, you're related to him, so you must be in, a problem too. And that's like, oh, you know what? You were married and had 4 kids. Well, all of them are infected with that their uncles or brother-in-laws or your brother's ideas as well. So boom, one person becomes another 5 people, and let's say the person's name was Bob. This is just an example. He has parents and other people. Basically, slowly but surely, every single person that was genuinely outspoken, like myself, if they were found out and sent to the gulags, they'd basically just take everyone related to that person off to the gulags. And so over decades of time, there was literally quotas for it wasn't actually called the KGB at the time, but the NKVD, I believe. But yeah, they had quotas of how many people they had to lock up. So eventually, they're running out of people that were genuinely anti-revolutionary or anti-communist, and they started going to other means. So they started cannibalizing their own party after the first 20 so years. And the sad, pathetic thing is, most of those people didn't fight it at all. They're just like, oh, yeah, I understand. It's the party's will. And it's because you understand that the entirety of the welfare state doesn't worship God. They worship the state. The state has taken the place of God for those people. And so if they are punished by the state, they literally accept it. This is insanity. All right, so here's a quote I want to share from the book. It's one of my favorite quotes that I've found, or that I was able to find today. Keep in mind, this is a huge book. It's over 500 pages, and I was just looking for a good quote to share with you guys. Here it goes. In our glorious fatherland, which was capable for more than 100 years of not publishing the work of Kadaev because of his reactionary views, you see, you are not likely to surprise anyone with the fact that the most important and boldest books are never read by contemporaries, never exercise an influence on popular thought in good time. And thus it is that I am writing this book solely from a sense of obligation, because too many stories and recollections have I acquired in my hands, and I cannot allow them to perish. I do not expect to see it in print anywhere with my own eyes, and I have little hope that those who manage to drag their bones out of the gulag will ever read it. I do not at all believe that it will explain the truth of our history in time for anything to be corrected. So what he's saying is, he wrote this giant book in 4 parts because he wanted to see the Soviet Union stop being totalitarian and evil, because he loved his country. He was a genuine patriot. And he wanted, basically, communism to fail. And he just wanted to tell his country folk of its evils, because he tells in another chapter that every once in a while they'd send people that were supposedly inspectors of the gulag system, and to make sure that they were hospitable and such. And these people were literally paid by wardens and such to say whatever the warden basically wanted, but obviously it just helps the party. So the inspectors themselves never actually intended on doing an actual investigation and looking for wrongdoing, because if they did so, what is that? That's counter-communist. So they themselves would be thrown into the gulags if they gave an unsatisfactory review. There's countless examples of that actually, where families, people, when they started cannibalizing their own party, people that were super communist and again insane were so bad and so brainwashed that when they were thrown into prison, they wouldn't say goodbye to their families because the family unit had already been destroyed, and they were sometimes mandated by judges to say goodbye to your family. You won't see them for the rest of your life. You know, like you're going on a 50-year term and you're already 40. Like during those times, Russians were living to like 45, 55. So yeah. Anyway, the book goes into extraordinary detail into the method by which they would sentence you, torture you, make you sign documents admitting to crimes that you typically did not commit more often than not. And then once you had signed those documents against your will or willingly, one or the other, you were sent to a number of gulags and tortured for the rest of your life, basically, because the gulag prison system was everyday torture until you die. And they wanted you to die. They wanted to thin the herd, basically. They wanted to kill off counter-revolutionaries or anti-communists. And so they actually wanted you. And so there's certain camps, in fact, that were actually more like extermination camps, like the Nazi Party. And they won't tell you this in the history books because they don't want you to know that a Jewish-led revolutionary, the Bolsheviks were Jews, or led by Jews, Trotsky, Lenin, both Jewish, they don't want you to know that this is their doing and this is their idea. Not to mention, I've mentioned in a previous video called Hyper Controversial, I forget what else it's called, but it's called, I think Hyper Controversial is in the title, but I mentioned that the only death camps ever discovered were discovered by Bolsheviks because they wanted the Nazis to be seen as more evil than themselves, while in reality, to this day, no gas chambers ever actually been discovered that used gas on Jews or prisoners. And this is verified. They're not telling us this because it disrupts the narrative that has been painted by leftists because they want to defend the globalist, elite, Jewish ruling class, basically. But nonetheless, I mean, I've been to Dachau and I've done hours and hours and hours of research into each death camp and many non-death camps, and I've realized that every single one of them, including Auschwitz, literally has to say that this is a replica or a recreation of what we think this gas chamber looked like, even the one in Auschwitz. So if the one in Auschwitz wasn't a legitimate gas chamber, then which one ever was? The one at Dachau that I saw, they said this was never used as a gas chamber, but it's a replica of what we think it was used for. And one of the smoking gun pieces of evidence about that, just to quickly mention, is you should watch that video, but quickly just look into how long it takes to cremate a human body, and then look at the number of furnaces each death camp had. They'd have like 4 or 8. I think Auschwitz had 8. And unfortunately, it takes roughly like 4 to 6 hours to burn one body. So for that reason, the number of bodies that they were able to cremate would have been in the hundreds. But if you want to get to the number of 6 million Jews or other undesirables having been killed by gas chamber, your number wouldn't even reach 1.1 million. So, yeah, there's a whole bunch of lies throughout history that we need to become aware of. We need to talk about. But unfortunately, we don't really have time at this present moment. Sorry, this is getting super blurry again. Yeah, but I apologize. At this present moment, we have bigger things to deal with. The second coming of a Bolshevik revolution could come to this country, and if that does happen, there will be fighting in the streets, but you need to prepare yourself just by getting firearms to protect yourself. And, if need be, if they try taking over the government itself, then, yeah, we're going to have a military coup. The military and veterans and civilians alike will have to unite, form militia, and take back our government. And to be honest with you, Antifa doesn't have a chance. Not a chance in hell. So stay optimistic, guys. As brainwashed as these fools are, they don't have the ability to actually reason with logic. They only have emotions. and they're morons and idiots. So there's no real way that they can get anything done because the only leadership they have is trickling down from people like George Soros. So they don't really have a chance in hell, I think, in this country. But please read this book if you can. It'll make you cry. It's made me cry several times. I'm not joking. I don't cry. I'm not a crier. But when you read tales of massive amounts of torture, murder, rape on a pandemic scale, it pulls on those heartstrings so much. And it's okay to be emotional sometimes. Emotions, I think, are something that we should use to be able to calibrate our morality. So when you see a pile of bodies, your emotions should tell you something is very wrong with this, and we need to figure it out. And then your logic should kick in after that to decide what went wrong and how to fix it, and never let it happen again. So, yeah, they keep saying, these people on the right keep saying there's a civil war coming. It's not going to be like a civil war, guys. There's no standing armies in this battle. Not that I can't imagine that happening, at least, but there will be blood in the streets, and there will be reallocation or movement of wealth from the rich to the poor. And if that happens, then we're going to lose a lot of our wealthy people in this country, just like the Russians did, and they will leave the country permanently, and they will find a new country. And believe it or not, call me crazy, but Vladimir Lenin has set up basically an anti-globalist country at this point, and Russia doesn't have a lot in the sense of having natural resources compared to places like the U.S., I would say. But the government at least protects its people, takes care of its people and such. So I think a lot of people will move there. Anyway, I don't think a Bolshevik revolution could ever happen in Russia again because they learned their lesson. Though they are not fully capitalistic, they are anti-communist. And, if McCarthyism is what it takes to defeat this threat, then I'm all for it. Let's bring back McCarthyism. I don't even care. To my fellow Americans and patriots, Godspeed. Keep yourself safe and prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Destination Truth out.